It's October.
You know what? It is October, even though it feels like July. It's October.
It is.
I think it's supposed to be 100 degrees today or something like that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I think my phone. I don't know if the phone is. It's always within. It's like the thing in your truck that tells you it's 102
Right.
outside. It's like it's not 102. It's 99. You know what? That's close enough.
It's kind of weird that we're having weather like this in October.
It is. It
100 degrees in
makes me a
October.
little nervous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All that shares I bought in Mount Shasta Ski Park. I think I should have shorted them. Maybe.
Oh, I'm not worried about that part because my mom told me yesterday because there's a bunch of acorns falling in my front yard.
Yeah.
And my mom says, "Oh, this means it's going to be a wet winter." I don't know why, but
I have never heard that one.
yeah, my mom apparently says that when acorns fall a whole bunch, it means there's going to be a wet winter.
Well, from your mom's mouth to God's ears, I hope we have, because I remember the drought a couple of years ago, and I don't want to repeat that. I want a nice wet winter.
Agreed.
But it is October, and it's a very warm October, and there's some stuff to talk about in real estate. One of the first things that come to mind is the feds did reduce rates last month.
Yeah.
But what effect did that? That didn't have an immediate effect, positive in
Yeah.
mortgage, but it's starting to.
Yeah, have an impact. Well, I think what people need to know when it comes to interest rates is just that the Federal Reserve makes a decision on the discount rate, but they've already been kind of vetting out that decision for like a month before. So interest rates did go down. I mean, we had rates almost as high as 7%. And then about 45 days ago now, the regional Federal Reserve banks like Bank of San Francisco, Bank of Atlanta, Bank of New York, Chicago, when those Federal Reserve chairs come out, they're all members of the board, right? When they start taking interviews and start telling people what they think should happen, and they're all kind of in alignment that rates are going to go down, the market actually moves to that.
Yeah.
They don't wait for Jerome Powell to come out and make an announcement. The market already recognizes that we're going to a lower rate environment, and all of a sudden you start to see the mortgage-backed securities start trading off at a lower rate than they were previously, and that's exactly what happened. So by the time that the Federal Reserve came out and made the announcement that we're cutting it 0.5%, that had already, for the most part, maybe not the full 0.5%, but definitely 0.25%. And with the optimism, maybe it would be 0.5% was already baked into the goods.
Well, we've been talking about for at least well over a month.
Yeah, and they've already been starting to come out now in the last week or two, and they're talking about lowering rates perhaps up to 2 more times this year, which could be another 0.5% on the discount rate. And if that chatter keeps on going, we're going to see interest rates, perhaps even in the below 6 by the end of the year. Right now, a 30-year fixed conforming conventional loan at 6.25, and an FHA/VA on average is around 5.5.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, I mean, so rates have already moved.
I think we
down.
were as high as 8. You said high as heaven. I think for a while there they peaked at 8 and then came back down.
Yeah, you're right. At the earlier part of the year, for almost a month, we had it at 8%. But just a couple months ago, we were at 7. And now we're quoting all the time around 5.5 for an FHA VA. And like I said, a conventional loan is around 6.25. But for the listeners, just to understand this is why it's such a big deal. Right now, if the interest rates drop 1%, a buyer's affordability increases by 10%. So they're saving money. It's exciting, actually. I mean, this is going to be good news for consumers because it was out of whack.
Oh, yeah.
Affordability index was looking pretty bad, and it's starting to improve.
So have you seen that in the market already? I know it's only been a short period of time, but are you starting to see, is it picking up because now buyers can buy? I mean, they can afford 400 when before they were stuck at 350 or 360.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great. I mean, last month, in the month of September, we had 166 close. Down
For the entire MLS?
For the entire MLS last month.
That's got to be one of the lowest numbers I've ever heard.
Well, it's been lower than that.
Yeah.
I think, I don't remember when Reading was established, but
yeah, that's low.
It's pretty low.
That's crazy low.
A year ago was 187, but the big part of the story is that if you go back 3 years ago, the sales volume was over 300.
Yep.
In September.
Yes.
And so to be in the 160s is not good. But for a buyer and a seller, it's not necessarily a bad thing because if you want to buy, you can buy. If you want to sell, you want to sell. It sucks for the industries though, because anything related to it, like real estate, mortgage, appraising, those types of services that are affiliated to or related to real estate, they're all impacted by it. But it's right now the rate environment is going to continue to go down. Sales volume is likely to pick up.
And these are things you can't control. I mean, they sit squarely in that realm of things you cannot control, interest rates. And so I mean, it's like you report on it, but what can you do about it?
Yeah, I mean, not much. I mean, I mean, to be honest, I mean, we're still doing great. But I think if you show up every day and you work full time and you put in 40 to 50 hours a week on average, and you take it serious, I think you can have a very viable business in this industry.
What is it doing to the rental market? I got to think with that low of volume of inventory moving. How's that? What are you seeing in the rental market?
Well, our local property managers right now are telling us that vacancy rates are averaging right around 7% for the
Pretty low.
Yeah, for the long-term rental market. And that's still factoring for, taking a property back into inventory, having to put carpet in it, put paint in it, maybe do a few fixes before it goes back on the rental market. I mean, that's all included in that vacancy.
So that's really not 7%. It's probably a little bit lower than that.
Yeah, you could argue it's just part of turnover, right? I would think we're as low as you're going to really get normally. And then the short-term rental market, which would be like your vacation rentals, it's a little bit more sluggish. Yeah, it's not performing quite as well. There's less people, less of that migration pattern shifting going on. So for right now, anyway, the short-term rental market, it's still performing. It's just not performing as well.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you about this, but because I don't know if you know anything about this, but I know that they're building the school. Bethel is building a school. Are they building housing into that? Are there going to be dorms?
So crazy. So no. The understanding I have is that there has been very little provision for dormitories.
Okay.
So I guess if
that's
you're
going to keep pressure on the rental market, then, because I was thinking if they build dorms, that's probably going to relieve a lot of inventory.
Yeah,
right? But that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. Simpson University still has dormitories, and they actually house a lot of international students. And so there's we still have some dormitory considerations. Shasta College has a few dormitories as well, but from what I understand, Bethel does not have in the new construction development really any significant provisions for dormitories.
You don't know. I'm really putting you on the spot. You don't know when their expected open date is, do you? I drive by it on the way out.
What they want or what's going to happen?
What's going to happen?
I would say that it's probably 2 years out.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when that does take effect, that should have an impact on housing.
You mean in terms of growth of student count and everything else?
A bunch of people come to the school, and then where's the housing for them?
Yeah, there's some additional accreditations that they've been able to obtain, and so for that reason, they'll be able to expand their courses a bit more. And so I agree. I think that they could definitely bring in additional students. So, so you got Simpson, who's our hometown university. You've got Bethel. And then you've got, of course, Shasta College, and these are it's good that we're getting even more excited about some of the educational opportunities that are here.
That sounds like a tailwind for housing prices to me, but we'll see. We'll see about that one.
Yeah.
So with the rental market, it's pretty tight. Rent usually you link to rentdata.org or something like that, where we have a website where you can check it out. Rents are probably, what are they? Where are they running? Do you know?
Well, if you look at rentdata.org right now, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a 2-car garage built in the early 90s is going to average around $2,085 a month.
Crazy. That sounds so high.
It does sound high, except for when you talk to people out of Sacramento and the Bay Area, and they're paying way more, and their houses are going for way more. So, I mean, we are still by far one of the most affordable places to live. We're a little mountain community, and we've got a whole lot going for us. And one of the things is that our homes are more affordable.
So the moral of that story is, anytime you're feeling down about the local market, call your friend who lives in Manhattan and ask them how things are going.
Yeah, or even Sacramento.
Yeah,
I mean, or call in the Bay Area. I mean, we talk to folks frequently that are coming out of there, and they're pretty shocked at how affordable we are.
Yeah, Redding is. I'm trying to remember. It was like an article I read that talked about, as far as a city with certain amenities, primarily like the medical community that we have, some other stuff, big box. This is far and away the most affordable town in the entire state.
Yeah.
For you to go lower than Redding, then you're going to give up those amenities.
I wouldn't disagree. I mean, hey, we have 2 Chick-fil-A's here now.
We do?
I mean, yeah, we got the second one open up by Costco.
I've never been to Chick-fil-A.
To be honest with you, I've been once, and I was over on the East Coast.
Oh, okay.
It's not on the top of my menu sources, but I am being told that if you have Chick-fil-A's in your town, you have arrived.
Well, I can tell you, I drive by it, and the line is around the corner. So, I mean, they must be doing something right?
Something right.
Yeah, the people love it.
I really wish the restaurant industry would be doing as well as that, though. I mean, that's fast food, obviously, but if you look at some of the fast food restaurants here in town, some of them have closed recently.
Some of the higher end stuff?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this has to do with the state of California, obviously, with the higher salaries that are being paid for part-time work or full-time work, or minimum wage going up. That's having an effect on menu prices. And if your menu price gets too high, then you have fewer customers. And so, yeah, we're going to see how this whole experiment works out.
You know, I was just watching my buddy Chamath Palihapitiya. Did I get his name right this time?
He doesn't get yours right all the time.
He never gets mine right. But he was just on Joe Rogan, and bear with me, I'm going to get the connection here. They were talking about automation and robots and what's happening in the next couple of years. And obviously food is that's one of the ones that's getting impacted.
Sure.
Right. And so like to what you said is the larger chains with kind of that fast food, they can take advantage of that. The nicer mom and pop custom meals, they can't take advantage of that.
Correct.
So it sounds like, this might be the beginning of something we're going to see where a lot of those little restaurants that we like are going to shut down and going to be replaced with, automation.
Well, replaced with, I think you'll be probably, getting your burger out of a machine pretty soon.
Oh,
and I think there's already some examples of that in the economy now. But it's obviously the experience is night and day difference because of that. But not everybody's going to go out 7 nights a week. So it's just there's some headwinds in the restaurant. There's still some headwinds in the commercial office space. Not so much here, but in the state, San Francisco still has a massive amount of vacancy in their commercial office buildings. So you've got that piece of it. There's some big block commercial sites that are still vacant. So California has some work to do. And a lot of it has to do with, how much pressure they're putting on business.
Yeah, well, I would think the San Francisco one is heavily affected by, number one, the homeless condition down there. I mean, anytime I've seen a video, it's we have some friends that live down in Piedmont, and they commute in, and you put signs in your window. You don't want anything in your car, and you put signs like, "Hey, there's nothing valuable in here. Please don't break the window," and they still break the window. So
keep your window rolled down.
Yeah, there you go. So they can just climb in and sleep. So that's having a big impact. That and the pricing, was so insanely unreasonable. It's like, even if they had like a 50% reduction rate, it still financially doesn't make sense to rent. But that's not renting.
No, it's not. So, fortunately,
I'm gonna pivot. Probably not my best segment here, but I was thinking about foreclosures, because you and I were talking before a couple months ago about how we were starting to see a lot of refis from people that had really good interest rates, but they had taken on a lot of personal debt.
Yeah.
So the refis I was wondering if were we going to start seeing foreclosure? Are we seeing people not paying their mortgage yet, or not yet? That hasn't kicked in yet.
Yeah, it's interesting you frame it that way, because it could be. So let's imagine you own a home and you have a large amount of credit card debt, and you unfortunately maybe even missed a payment. And then you go talk to a lender because you've been hearing that you could just consolidate your credit cards into one monthly payment and bring your monthly obligations down, which on the surface may sound like a good idea. But because you have so much consumer debt, and because you may have already fallen behind on your payments, you go to meet with your lender, and the lender says, "I'm sorry, but you don't qualify for financing right now." Well, now you're in a position where you got to make a decision, right? Do I sell my home? Right?
Yes.
Or do I not make my payments on my home and move into that foreclosure situation? The foreclosure market here locally has not gotten too bad. We've had it as high in the last 6 months as 180 units in some stage of foreclosure. Yeah.
Wow.
In some stage of foreclosure here in Shasta County, and now we're at about 150-ish in some stage of foreclosure. If history tells us anything, only about a third of those will actually even hit the market. And then the balance of them will either modify their existing loan, refinance perhaps, or liquidate the property by selling it, obviously. So, even if you took in 50 foreclosures and you spread that over the course of 6 months, that's going to be less than 10.
9.
With a sales volume at about 160 to 200. It's not going to have a significant impact. I mean, I can remember the days when about 70% of all the homes sold were either short sale or foreclosure, and only 30%.
2009, 2010, something like that.
Yeah, and only 30% were equity sellers, and that was a tough market. This is nothing.
Tough market.
It's something for those losing their home. I don't want to understate that, but
no.
But in terms of the bigger picture, this is nothing.
I mean, when you look at, people like to talk and always go back to 2008, 2009 was like such a tremendous impact on real estate, any type of hiccup, people always go back and compare it now to then. Something you and I've talked about is back then, I can't remember what the percentage of homes were their second or tertiary home. It was something huge. Like, are we talking like 40%?
Oh, no, it's higher than that. They're estimating between 50 and 60% of all purchases originated in 2005 were non-owner occupied.
Speculation.
Speculation.
Everyone flipping.
Yes. And the moment the market stopped appreciating, the incentive for speculation went away. The inventory jumped from about 600 homes up to about 12 to 1,400 within about 6 months. Prices dropped quickly. Within 3 years, we were down 40, 45%. Short sales and short foreclosures were about 70% of all sales in the market. And it was a totally different fact pattern than it is today. And so people now are buying homes on a 30-year fixed mortgage. Speculation is probably less than 10% of the market overall. All of the dynamics, we would pass every stress test that a bank could run on us right now in the residential real estate space.
I have to think that so when you think about that, when you think about how many of these homes were secondary or tertiary homes, speculation, now it's 10%. It has to be a bunch of people moved here. I mean, how do you suddenly, or just a bunch of kids grew up and bought houses? How do you go that kind of?
Well, it wasn't unique to here, but what was happening is that new subdivisions were coming online. People would write offers on phase 1, phase 2, and they would secure that contract price. And for 12 months or something, as soon as they closed escrow on it, it already appreciated 20%.
Yeah.
And in some cases they rented them out, or in other cases they just decided to sell them. And so they were the demand side of that equation. And then when the market stopped appreciating, investors realized that this wasn't probably the best investment for them. They stopped purchasing. Inventories swelled immediately. You had a huge amount of new construction taking place. I mean, there's a lot of houses that literally they were at the stage of framing and they decided that it was probably more economical to take the framing down and just leave the slab.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's how fast it stopped.
It did stop fast.
And a huge shock to the market. Of course, and we already know the stories about how many banks went out of business as a result of that. But right now, you have people buying on 30-year fixed mortgages. There's very little interest only. There's no negative amortization that I'm aware of. In the market, meaning there was high risk loans that we were used to seeing, back then. We don't see any of that now. Half of it's illegal now. You can't even do it.
Yeah.
And so again, we just don't see that fact pattern. I mean, what we see is that as interest rates go down, affordability is going to increase, and it's likely that buyers will be competing against the same products, and we're probably going to see some appreciation in the market next year until new construction kicks off at a meaningful pace. And once we have the resale market, people already own a home. Once they start releasing those homes to the home inventory, to replenish the home inventory, we could see prices stabilize again. But I think the short term is we're going to see some appreciation next year in the housing market. Longer term will probably plateau again at some point as we bring more inventory to the market.
How long does it take to inventory the market? I mean, how long does it take between a developer submitting a plan? I mean, it's still 12 months before somebody walks through the threshold, right? I mean,
what do you mean with curb gutter sidewalk already there and you're just building the house?
Yeah.
Averaging 6 to 12 months.
Okay. So then what is it from, hey, I bought, somebody bought 20 acres and they've got to put in the curb gutter sidewalk. It's another, 6 to 12
3
months?
years.
3 years.
3 years from start to finish.
So when you say long term, you're saying probably at least 3 years from right now.
Well, you've got about 1,000 or so paper lots in town that are in some form of approval. And there's a lot of them that are already what we call shovel ready, where all you have to do is go pay for your permit and start grading.
Okay,
so we can catch up real quick. We wouldn't be able to. The replenishment rate in the housing market in Shasta County is not high enough that we couldn't absorb a huge amount of new construction right away. Let me rephrase how I'm saying that. So, if a builder right now, there wouldn't be enough builders out there. There wouldn't be enough houses built right now. They couldn't. They don't have access to the labor. You don't have access to the materials. There's not enough lots that are actually approved yet to create the problem that we had back in 06.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can only think of 2 builders that are really doing anything. I mean, I know there's one off here, one off there, but there's really, D.R. Horton is actively building through all this.
Yep.
And I think you said Palomar.
Yeah, Jeb Allen's working on a small project that's down off of Wyndham and Riverside. 30, 40 units, can't remember. A couple of them are going to be on the river. I'm guessing who those are going to belong to. And then, the rest of it will be a nice gated community. I think it's going to average over 600,000. There was probably a little bit of work they're working with the city on to get some entitlements and maybe some secondary access issues kind of figured out, just flow. But Jeb's done a lot of work in this town, and I'm sure that they'll probably find a way to make a win for everybody in that scenario. But D.R. Horton is by far the largest dominating player in the market right now. We have the opportunity to serve them in 3 different developments currently, and they still have their own sales office, but they want to have some extra exposure, so they've hired our company to come in and do that for them. And they're doing really well. And then there's a collection of other small builders here locally too, who I know are just chopping at the bit. They want to get back in the ground.
Yeah.
And they're just waiting for right now with interest rates coming down and, this forecasting coming out of the Fed saying they want to bring the rates down lower. And we're seeing mortgage-backed security starting to drift down a little bit. I think that they're pretty optimistic that, like I said, this next year in 2025, I think it'll be I would call it the return of the home builder.
Okay. Well, we'll in 2025, we'll be reporting on how many permits are pulled. Compare, because it's been, we're down like, I think last time we talked, it was down like 67% from the year before, something like maybe 2 years before. So it was down.
I think that trend's going to buck next year.
In the next month, we got something happening, and I wonder how it's going to affect, if it even is going to affect the local market. But, next time you and I talk, we'll have a president elect.
Oh yeah,
right?
that's
we're
right.
gonna have elections.
Yeah,
because you and I won't meet till the middle of November.
True.
I assume we'll know who it is.
Right.
Who knows now? But do you see that impacting real estate? Reading real estate. Does the president really affect any of that here?
In the big picture, no. In the micro, it has an impact on optimism. So this time of year, every 4 years for the last 25 years that I've been doing this, every 4 years, you always hear this, you start to fall into this wait and see season. We're in the wait and see, right? Okay. So there's a collection of people in the market right now who are, if you talk to them on the phone about wanting to sell or talking about wanting to buy, they're wait and see.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that wait and see is for. But usually about a month after the election is over, when people realize that the world didn't come to an end, your candidate either won or lost, but things are still relatively the same in the housing market. You resume living your life. And I suspect that this time will be a lot like the other, however many times we've had since 1776.
I think
actually, that's not when the first president was, though.
No.
When was that?
1780.
81?
I don't know.
I know, that's terrible.
Well,
we just lost a bunch of listeners who are like, you don't know that. But
it wasn't 1776, because that's our declaration. We still had to go to war.
Yeah.
Well, I was about to say that I think we dramatically overvalue or overestimate what the impact of national level elections versus underestimate the impact of local elections. Your city council, your county supervisors.
Man. Yeah.
People don't get fired up about that, but if you want to talk about your local life, they're the ones that have way more of an impact.
Way more. Yeah. If you want to pay attention to anything right now, beyond the politics of the election or whatever, it would be, look at what the state of California is doing with these different propositions.
Yeah.
One that's on the voting rolls for this year, I think, is Prop 33, which they want to give the ability for local municipalities to have additional rent control measures allowed to be applied. And I can appreciate anybody would think that might be a good idea, because you're probably thinking of it saying, well, it'd be great if they couldn't raise rent. However, it also means that they won't build anymore. So if a builder or a contractor cannot pencil out an opportunity for them to make money, they're not going to build. And so I think that they're at huge risk if things like that get approved. Anytime, and I think I've said this too many times on these podcasts, anytime you start to manipulate or mess with the potential for resupplying or replenishing the housing market, you're putting the whole market at risk that you're going to see a cost inflation.
I just imagine when I was a kid, we used to see photos of people waiting in line for toilet paper in the Soviet Union. Like, there you go.
Yeah.
That's what regulation of the marketplace.
Yeah.
And we've seen, it plays out so many times. To your point on rental markets, if you look across a number of cities in America where they have that really strong rent control, they have no housing, and they end up getting really bad housing.
Yep.
Because what ends up happening is they don't build nice homes on the river with the gate. They build really bad housing.
On their spreadsheet, they just want to see a tick mark.
Yes.
And so literally that's what they do. It's the single most impactful thing that any government can do to increase the ability to have rental properties and decrease the cost of rent is to increase supply.
Yeah.
And the only way you can do that is to get your hands off of the oversight at the level that it becomes punishing for somebody to try to build.
I remember, my dad moved to Texas a number of years ago, and he bought a house, old house on property. He tore it down to the studs, and the inspector came out, and he was walking through, and he goes, "Oh, you're from California." He goes, yeah, how do you know? He goes, this is way overcode. This is insane overcode. Like this is, triple reinforced. And, my dad was like, oh, because he had built in California. And so he was just, he was just building to California specs. And, I don't see houses just collapsing left and right in Texas.
If you go over into West Redding here in Shasta County on West Street right now, you got houses that were built turn of the century. They're 125 years old and they're still standing. I think we've overdone it.
Yeah.
And so, but what's going to be challenging is that they're going to have to concede some of their green initiatives to help bring down the cost of housing, because a lot of that extra cost associated with a house is meeting all these new codes. Do I see them backing that off? Probably not. But we might be able to get them to stop adding more, and that could be a win long term. And I think that's ultimately where we want to do is just lean into it, try to get them to slow down the excitement they have about passing a new rule.
You know what it is? The average person, and I put myself in this lot, is that unless you study this stuff, when people get up and say certain things like, hey, we have a housing shortage, so, we've got problems with rents, we're going to have rent control. None of us, we're not all economists, right? We didn't go to school. We don't have PhDs in economics to be like, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
You go, oh yeah, okay, you're right. We do have a problem with rent. Oh, okay, well that fix it. And you just kind of go on with your life. You just think like, okay, well and it's the average person doesn't know like, hey, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
When you do this, you're getting rid of all the incentive for people to build. So now you're not going to replenish inventory.
Yep.
So suddenly now, remember when we went to the store and the rows were empty of stuff? It's the same thing. You're going to go out in the market and go, why are there no houses? Because builders can't afford to build.
Yep.
And you said either the last episode or the episode before, the government doesn't build homes.
No.
Right?
Yep.
So when you've tightened too hard on the builders, they won't build, and that's not going to help rent. It's not going to help purchasing. No. It goes downhill fast.
The majority of the new home regulations that we're all living by today were created by people that are no longer in government. We're living the consequences of decisions that were made a long time ago. And the challenge that we have now is that we need to go in and, like, for example, in the state of California has its own building code. You come to the city of Redding, we have the state building code, and now we have Shasta County's building code, and we have the city of Redding's building code, which is an overlay on that. We're adding layers of bureaucracy on top of the housing market. If we were really smart here locally, what we do is we'd strip away all of the additional requirements beyond the state of California's building code to make it as easy for people to build in Shasta County as humanly possible. Let's get our housing costs down to an affordable level. That's the goal.
Go back to what were the standards in 1990? Because I don't see those houses collapsing.
No.
And those are 34, did I do my math right? 34 years old.
Sure.
So yeah, so even you don't have to go back to 1900, but go back to the 1980s or something. Those houses are still all around.
There you go.
And that would at least free up some profit, because if builders can't make money, if they can't feed their family, why would they possibly build a house?
Totally agree.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Who goes to work for free?
Yep.
I mean, nobody.
Well, let's see if we can solve it by next month then.
Yeah, see if we can solve it by next month. Before we close out, did you want to talk about the national market at all? Because we talk about the Redding market, we stay very fixated on the. I mean, this is where we live, but nationally, the news is quite different from the Redding market.
Yeah, I'll put it in 30 seconds for you. So the national market is a lot of the destination markets for Shasta County were like Florida, Texas, Idaho, Tennessee, right? Mm-hmm. Florida, housing market's going down. Talk to colleagues over there frequently every week. And they're telling me on average anywhere between 10 and 15% prices have come down in Florida. In Texas, same thing. Things have slowed down. If you go up into Idaho, the market has plateaued. It's not necessarily going down, but it's plateaued. And if you look at Tennessee, the market's softening up there as well. So, a lot of that migration pattern shift stuff I was talking about earlier has already taken effect. People are no longer doing it at the same level they were. A big reason why people were moving out of Shasta County 4 or 5 years ago was because of the affordability in these other areas. It was another reason to consider it. Well, that reason's kind of off the table at the moment because those costs in those markets have gone up quite a bit. So there might be other motivating factors, but it's not just the affordability anymore.
Yeah. So the national market, the big destination markets, they overbuilt probably. They had their boom, and now comes the bust, right? Yep. It always follows the boom, and that's where they're at. But well, Josh, I appreciate your time.
Sure
Next
thing.
time we speak, we'll have a new president-elect, and we can talk about that. And see
Sounds great. All right, thanks.
Good?
How we do? Close?
Great.